because my crystal ball was partially broken because my top trend that I wrote in 2019 for 2020 was virtual events. So that was my top trend for going into 2020 for completely different reasons that we ended up having. So that's why it was partially broken. I obviously couldn't foresee a pandemic happening. But like virtual events were the thing for me back then, because like there's a matter of inclusion, there's a matter of sustainability that we're forgetting about right now, even though the inclusion part is probably present, because like we want to include people that can travel for the pandemic, can be there because they're scared of getting sick or they have whatever existing conditions. There's a number of reasons why people can't attend events these days. So the inclusion and sustainability part of virtual events is why I was advocating virtual events before the pandemic and why I will keep advocating for those after the pandemic.
Hello friends, this is Events Demystified, brought to you by 3 Fun Events, and I'm your host, Anca. With me on the show today, I have a star guest, Julius Solaris, the head of engagement at Swapcard, previously known as the founder and editor-in-chief of EventMB, acquired in 2019 by Skift, the largest and most influential travel media company worldwide. Julius has been named one of the most influential individuals in the meetings industry by many magazines and media for the past 10 years. He has conducted some of the most groundbreaking research for the event industry, reviewing over 3,000 events and interviewing more than 15,000 event professionals. Let's just say my interview skills pale in comparison to his, and I just hope you won't be that apparent today. Anyway, Julius's analysis and reports have been downloaded and over 50,000 event professionals have attended Julius's events. Julius has been a keynote for events in 12 countries, and those events had over 200,000 attendees. I don't know about you, but if you've been around the event industry for maybe a second or two, you've most likely heard of Julius once or twice or maybe 100 times. So let me just say I am super excited to invite him in on the show and discuss the future of the event industry as we see it right now. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Welcome to the show, Julius, and I have to say this in Italian because I have practiced it with Alexa. Buongiorno, come stai, amico mio?
Tutto bene, Anca, perfetto, parli benissimo.
I love it because at one point I was saying this and Alexa said that meant rabbit. And I was like, wait a second, which part?
Oh my God. No, that's controversial in Italian as well. It can mean a bad word, so don't.
Should we say that word?
No,
or should we stay away from it?
Let's move on.
Okay, let's move on. Well, I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. We fought a little bit of the technology gods this morning, but then let's hope that they're on our side now. And I would love to hear a little bit more about you. Tell our audience, what's your journey? Just, how many words you want to say. I'll start with the genesis of all, because I just want to hear the beginning. What brought you to events and then ultimately to Swapcard?
So listen, by the time I got this story, I always realize I'm getting older and older. Timing starts to get I was 25 years ago I started doing this and whatever. I remember when I used to tell this and I was like, oh yeah, I started last year. So yeah, I'll always loved events, always been involved with that since an early age. Did a lot of stuff in events, from conferences to more sort of special events since I was almost a teenager. Then I started my university career and path rather than career, and started learning more about technology, and social media was hot at the time. Technology was hot, 2004. See, now
don't even say it.
Start to get very old. And yeah, I started a blog in 2007. The topic I had at the time was events, the intersection of events and technology, trying to make sense of all of the new things that were coming to events, pretty much similar to what is happening today with virtual events, I would say. I would compare that moment in time between 2006 and 2009, very similar to what we're living today. So I was at the beginning of that cycle. with the interest in technology, intersection of tech and social media and events. And I started to talk about it for many years by myself until some people were crazy enough started to read. And I guess I started to grow the blog. It became my business. I sold that business. And then I moved to Swapcard a few months ago now. So a big career change in, joining the dark side of the force in technology. But, it was no secret. I always loved technology. So it's great to be part of walking the walk other than just talking about it. So it's a new journey and it's a very exciting one for sure.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you persevered to those beginning years where you said, I don't even know who read that blog, but I just kept going at it. And then it became this big, huge information magnet.
Not even my family.
Usually family is last.
They can't read English. So
I don't think my family watches this podcast or listens to it anyway. So I totally, I can understand.
You can relate. No, I feel you. Don't worry about it. Like English speaking people are going to come. That's what happens.
Well,
I'm sure they already do.
You know what's funny though? Like this podcast, like so as weird as it is, it has one of the biggest audiences in some of the European countries, not even Romania, where I'm from, but like Hungary and places that I wouldn't even think about. It's like, interesting. I'm thankful for data, right? And the analytics then tell me all this, because otherwise I'd be like, well, I don't know, like somebody out there might be listening. Who knows?
Hey, I love that. No. That's the only way to grow stuff, right? If you're not into data, it's just a hobby, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, you just got back from MPI's WEC in Vegas. I mean, you are in Vegas, as I learned. Please tell me a little bit about that. How was it? Was this like a hybrid event or mostly in person?
Interesting. So it was my first big event after CES here in Vegas in January 2020. It was my last one. So it's been quite an emotional journey, I guess, in between. So there's a lot of expectations. Obviously, WEC relies a lot on international audiences to travel. So that was missing. So they had 1,200 people in attendance. And it was a different event. It was my first WEC, first of all. I never attended a WEC before.
Well, let me just say that I love your tweet thoughts from day one. And I'm going to just say this. It was just so funny. And you said something like along the lines, last night I was at the opening night for 1,200 people in-person conference, music, people dancing, full drinks, everything, right? Today I am completely exhausted, completely drained, without a single alcoholic drink. Consider quick burnout for in-person events. It's overwhelming. And I couldn't agree more. It was so funny because last weekend I had a 2-day conference and I had another event this weekend. And at one point I was hiding in a bathroom for a quick reset throughout my event because it was just so much. I kid you not. So I guess my question to you is, did you have moments like that where you felt like you needed to hide as much as you enjoy seeing all these people and interacting? Did you have those moments? What was your preferred hiding spot?
Well, I was already hiding at events before the pandemic, to be honest. I love events, but I'm kind of introverted by nature. I'm not the networker, like approaching people. I usually get approached a lot as well. So the dynamic of attending events for me is usually different. And I only attend like industry events. So I kind of, I don't know, it was weird. They made us sit at the beginning for like a 1.5 hour session, like with different sort of mini sessions within it, but like 1.5 hour block. I don't know how to call it. With like
and after 3 minutes, your brain was properly fried.
No, I just stood up and left because it was too much. I couldn't, like, it was a dark room. Like, even if we had Usher, the singer, on stage, I couldn't care less. After a year and a half of content and virtual events, like, the last thing I need. But I don't mean this as a criticism to WC and PI. I want to make sure this is clear, because this is not about criticizing. I think it's a learning journey for them as well. And I think that what virtual has taught us is really that we need to shorten the length of sessions. Like, there's no attention spans. People are there to just mingle with each other, to just have the corridor talk, the alley sort of interaction, rather than being in a big room listening to someone. So that was that. And then it was like the whole party experience. I was completely, like, the next day I felt like I drank 6 bottles of wine. I had the worst hangover I've had
way
for years. So, I don't usually drink while I'm attending business business events. So I didn't drink that night. I was drinking water. It was at the Allegiant Stadium here in Vegas, the football stadium. It was closed with air conditioning on the pitch with bands, with like games and all of that. It's just too much, Like everybody, like we're not used to peopling, as people say these days. It's like we have to really get back to it. It's takes time.
And exactly. And it's funny because you mentioned all those things, and it was something that I experienced last week as well with this 2-day hybrid conference where we lost like more than 50% of the in-person audience, kind of like 4 hours into the event, and it was expected. And like people cannot hang for that long. I was exhausted just from a producer standpoint, half through that whole thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, praying to God that I can make it through the end, because it was exhausting. And it was exactly that same, being overwhelmed. It's like too much, too fast, and we need to ease into it.
I mean, priorities have definitely changed in terms of like us attending in-person events. Like we're not driven to speakers or content as we were before. We're driven by networking, entertainment, or simply like experiencing something, and then maybe a little bit of content. So I guess like the biggest opportunity that planners could miss right now is to think going into events as they were before and not really digesting all the inputs that we've collected during this pandemic, which is about shifting our priorities. So if we start to think content first, I think that we're going to fail miserably. At least like on my attendee, like I'm never going to attend again like an event that has an incredible lineup of, I don't care. I mean, I'm just going to go there for the networking. I'm going to go there to mix with other people.
Absolutely. So as far as the actual hybrid execution of the event, do you have any thoughts on that? How would you rate that?
It's important to clarify like different levels of hybrid, I believe. So the level that WC and MPI implemented was literally like they had a nice space with an online host moderator dedicated to that, almost like TV studio on the floor, powered by Hyatt. And Jesse States was there doing their thing. I believe interacting with the online audience and presenting the speakers as they would come, but we don't know because there was no interaction whatsoever with the offline.
So you didn't see the output of what was happening, really?
No, it was two separate experiences. We never interacted with the online audience. And to be honest, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's actually a good thing. It's like, do I want to interact with you? Like, do I want to go to the online audience? Do I want them beamed in via Skype or whatever, or Zoom? I don't. I actually, that's the last thing I want to do, attending an in-person event after being on a computer for like 2 years. I don't want to be in a room with a computer. Like, can you hear me? Mute yourself. Like, that's it. I'm done with that. Definitely not doing it in an in-person environment. So a lot of planners are thinking about right now, I believe, in terms of how coordinating these two experiences, whether they need to be synchronous, whether they need to mix the two audiences, whether they need to be asynchronous, because a lot of companies, clients that we work with, we know that they're delaying the virtual experience to the next week. They don't need to happen at the same time. So yeah, that was the spirit there. We never interacted with the online audience. So you can talk about two separate experiences rather than pure hybrid one, mixing the two audiences.
Do you feel like the virtual audience missed out on not interacting with the in-person or not having the opportunity to, or was it from the get-go, I guess, delivered to become two different events?
I think it was from the get-go thought and planned as two separate experiences. Did the online audience missed out? Totally. I mean, whenever I was sharing on social media stuff, they were like, oh my God, this is so bad. Like, I wish I could be there. So there's a lot of FOMO that you have to take into account for those that can be there.
Yeah. So I guess networking is not necessarily going to be all inclusive across for all physical and online attendees. There's definitely going to be some differences in this model.
Yeah, it can be done. I mean, don't get me wrong. Networking between the two audiences still can happen. I feel in some instances it may be the case. Like if you take, for example, medical congresses that are like heavily content-based, like some form of collaboration between the two audiences, it's very well can happen easily. And it's welcomed by the audiences as well. For a pure networking event or like for groups of people that need to kind of mix after a while where like relationships are already established, like will I go on the app to discover who's there? Not at all. Like it's the last my concern. But once again, that's my filter, having attended a million of these events, knowing everybody in the industry. So, I come from a different place in terms of my specific needs as an attendee, maybe like a young attendee of like first time attendee of MPI that never attended an event before, newcomer to the industry. Maybe they want to get around a little bit more and mix with other people. So, yeah.
But it's true, like given the opportunity to meet in person and network in person, and then mix that with, well, let me set up a virtual meeting right now in between all this in-person meetings. I don't know if that would be necessarily on my agenda or on my radar.
Totally.
So I guess one of the hardest challenges with virtual events has been engagement. And now with hybrid events is connecting people joining virtually in person. And especially when it comes to this in-person speaker that is delivering content, like you said, like it was Usher. And I think you tweeted something about the line, like, how do you connect as an in-person speaker with the online audience? And his answer was, well, you make love to the camera. Well, sign me up. I am still to see how that actually works in real life. Probably that's something that should be kept, for an adult audience.
The rest of us, I don't know as much. Yeah.
Exactly. But I guess in all seriousness, this is a challenge. It's still a challenge. And even more so after producing a few hybrid events, I see how much of a challenge really that is, how much in planning or we're hoping for other results. Are we chasing unicorns here? Is this something that could be achievable, I guess?
So I believe for the online part, very much so. I think there's strategies now to engage the audience better. I mean, you have to think that we come from a history of webinars anyway. For those never planned a webinar before, I can understand how this is a journey in the making. But, I've been doing webinars for like 8 years before the pandemic. Therefore, like I have history in terms of like how engagement sucked back then. It's much better today, if not only because the platforms offer way many tools, many more tools, and the meeting design of online events has dramatically changed based on the feedback of 1 million events happening over the past year online. So that has gained speed and traction. So I believe it can only get better. And there's definitely tools. I mean, if your online meeting is not engaging, it's just because you're making an active decision not to make it so. It's just like,
or not putting enough effort into or budget.
Like you're whacking off, you're setting up a platform like whatever, Zoom, or even like whatever other platform, you're whacking people on there, putting some content, expect people to love it after they've attended 1,000 virtual events in the past month. So that's not going to happen.
Basically intention. It takes intention.
There's definitely intention. Yeah, there's definitely intention, spending the time, understanding what people like, what your audience likes, and what are the latest trends and how meetings are evolving online as well. So you have to keep an eye on that if you want to make it engaging. So obviously blaming it on the medium, it's obviously the oldest of the excuses that I've heard for years and years. So I don't want to get into that. I think the in-person part, it's funny because like the mantra for all the in-person event planners during the pandemic is that there's no such thing as face-to-face. And I agree, there's no such thing as face-to-face, but let's not say that in-person events pre-pandemic were the most engaging thing happening out there. It was actually the opposite. We were like downward spiral towards like very average meetings and events where people would just go and be bored most of the time. And then there was like the spark of experiences that were just born in 2019, but for the previous 15 years have been death and boredom. So, and I've been combating that, writing about it for 15 years. So
I guess we do remember things differently after it passed, right? It's almost like you break up with someone and you remember all the good parts, but you don't remember all the bad things.
Oh, amazing. Oh, no, not the case. Like actually there was like people making fun of in-person events from in different industries and saying, oh, I miss the bad coffee, I miss the sales pitch or the 1-point presentation, 1-point font presentation full of
death by PowerPoint.
Right? I mean, that was the norm. 99% of meetings and events were like that. Then you have like the amazing ones that were creating a new era of experiences. And we were at a peak of we were peaking towards that. More events were becoming experience driven rather than boredom driven. So that was happening, but we were far from there. So engagement engagement was still the number one issue from all the research that I've done. People just didn't engage at sessions in-person events. So we are having that, like this problem is going to be multiplied by 10 times in the next few months as we come back, because if we plan to use the same format that we used to have back then to the new sets of needs that attendees have, we're going to fail best possible fashion, like the most absurd fashion. People are going to like hate it, loathe it, and just don't come, because you have to think also that like there's a lot of commitment right now in terms of attending in-person events that people have to make. It's like the difficult travel condition, uncertainty about wearing masks, distancing, different
scheduling conflicts.
Different policies in different states in the US, for example, or Europe even more so. So there's a big commitment that we make when we attend in person. So if you don't deliver on that commitment, you're going to be out of business. Like I'm not even saying like you're going to have low attendance at the next one, like out of business, like it's in or out. Like it's like people are giving shots right now to new experiences. But like for me, I'm going to evaluate like 20 times what my next event is going to be. Maybe in a year's time, I'm going to attend one more event. That's it.
Absolutely. And it's going to take some time to build back some of the trust that possibly was lost with delivering some of those experiences that were not up to par or not to the expectation that was built to, for sure. Julius, to me, you're best known for beginning of the year event trends. I love your take every year on what the upcoming year might have in store for us. And obviously 2020 was quite the year to predict. And by March, we found ourselves like looking into this magic crystal ball and looking at it, like shaking it. It's broken. Why is it not working? Like, hoping for some more insight. As we're looking at fall, winter of 2021 and going into 2022, what does your crystal ball tell us about what's coming next when it comes to event trends, and what are we going to see around here?
So let me correct you there, Anca, because my crystal ball was partially broken, because my top trend that I wrote in 2019 for 2020 was virtual events. So that was my top trend for going into 2020 for completely different reasons that we ended up having. So that's why it was partially broken. I obviously couldn't foresee a pandemic happening. But like virtual events were the thing for me back then, because like there's a matter of inclusion, there's a matter of sustainability that we're forgetting about right now, even though the inclusion part is probably present, because like we want to include people that can travel for the pandemic, can be there because they're scared of getting sick, or they have whatever existing conditions. There's a number of reasons why people can't attend events these days. So the inclusion and sustainability part of virtual events is why I was advocating virtual events before the pandemic, and why I will keep advocating for those after the pandemic. So the space for this is not something that I bumped into in 2020. It's something that I've been talking about for years, and with very few listening, and those are the ones that today are extremely well advanced in the virtual game. But going back to 2022, I believe that virtual is going to be becoming part of the portfolio of marketing activities, or events activities, as its own category. I believe in virtual as a category, as opposed to a reflection of in-person events or something necessarily tied to in-person events. Then we want to talk hybrid, because we want to leverage of all the people and content that we have in person and make it also a virtual experience. Somehow, absolutely, that can happen, but it needs to have its own design. It needs to have its own experience. The level of expectations for virtual is not what it used to be in 2019. We have attended 1 million events. I said it multiple times. Our expectations are way higher. You can just ask me to attend a virtual event anymore if you haven't planned for an amazing dedicated speaker, incredible experience, something that it's engaging, something that has not working with other attendees. So it's a whole new set of requirements for the virtual piece that need to fall into place that make it completely different. Obviously, we can foresee teams splitting up and having the in-person people, the virtual people, and maybe an event strategist at the top that coordinates a unified experience for the year. Obviously, what is going to collate together, something that is a very dear topic at Swapcard, is the community element. We believe in that, meaning overarching online infrastructure and platform, almost an umbrella, where all these instances of events come together. So you have your in-person, you have your virtual virtual, you have your hybrid. But at the end of the day, the place where to go to connect all this information, to retrieve the information discussed, is just one place. It's just one platform where you go into and you will find everything, all the events to attend, all the content, all the exhibitors, all the products that you've been in touch in a trade show. So we really believe in this model as the real way to pull it all together going forward. So that's what we believe in. That's the natural evolution of it, because even attending MPI, WEC, you have a mobile app which you download, but it feels like a siloed experience that stays in the event. And once the event is over, you move on, right? There's a need right now to reconnect with that audience and reconnect once I come back home and maybe see some sessions. So that's what everybody start thinking about right now, because this virtual thing is not going to go away for a while. Like, let's not make the same mistake we made last summer, where it's over, let's party and let's sell. That was the feeling last summer, right? We're going back until September and October hit. And obviously there's talk of that happening in the UK right now. There's a lot of countries that are still in uncertainty. So, this uncertainty period will keep on lasting for a while, unfortunately. So let's not make dramatic decisions and say, okay, we're back to in person. That's what we need to think about, because we're making a terrible mistake.
Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com. Yeah, and it's easy for us here with all the vaccines rolling through and all of us feeling vaccinated and safe again to forget that there's actually a large majority on this planet that they're not there yet. They're far behind. And I have friends in Europe and I have family in Europe and have conversations like this every day where I think is safe. They just don't think the same way, or even their setup, their government rules, they're nowhere close to being that open as we are. It's just sometimes we do live in that type of a silo where we think like our world is just the immediate, that we see, immediate geographical location, whatever we're in, which couldn't be far away from the truth. Now,
but also let me tell you, Anca, let's not pretend that this experience of the past 2 years hasn't changed stuff like for good, right? So let's not pretend like, okay, we just erase whatever has happened so we can go back. That's like, unfortunately, this has lasted too long for not to have an impact on stuff like people not wanting to work in an office anymore, right? People not willing to travel unless there's a big excuse for it. Like the norm back then was to just jump on a plane and just like go for a meeting on a day and come back. That's probably not going to happen for a while, if not forever. Let's not pretend there's no younger generations that started to get involved in the industry with the pandemic being 100% virtual. I was in a Clubhouse chat. Let me tell you this story. It's pretty fun. I was in a Clubhouse chat on the return of in-person events, and we were discussing and talking what are the considerations, the numbers, these topics. All of a sudden there's a lady that comes on stage and she said, I started working as a producer for virtual events during the pandemic. And what she said, I was shocked to hear. She said, so I think that this in-person event things is just a fad and it's going to go down. It's just going to disappear. I was like, what?
And all of us that have coming from like in-person producing events are like, no, we want it back.
Right. But like, that makes you think about like what people that were born with virtual, like they don't even know what in-person planning planning in-person events means. And they don't even want to know. They just are committed to virtual. They feel virtual is the way forward. That's what is going to happen. And that's the future. And maybe in-person events is going to be maybe a subset of the virtual experience. And to be honest, I tend to think that way as well. If you look at the biggest users of virtual, which are, the streamers, the gamers that do Twitch, right? They meet annually for esports in person, but like the biggest of the action happens online most of the time, but then they need to meet. So there's still a need for that, but as a subset of the online experience. So
not the main experience.
Major change in how we perceive this.
Yeah. It's almost like you're saying that the in-person events were going to be for all this older generation people, like these people that were like, they're kind of like the old farts. If they want in-person events, just let them have them. But we're just going to do our virtual thing because we've been raised in this.
And that's the thing that I noticed at WEC. I was looking around and it was like old people like me there, like,
which were young in so many ways, Julius, but I'm just saying, when you're in your 30s and 40s, you can think yourself as old at that point compared to a 20-year-old, right?
It was like me in the 40s and up. It was not me and down. Yeah. So partly because a lot of young people have been laid off and they're not in the industry anymore. Big topic there by itself. Like there's no people working right now in the industry, but also like all those that wanted this comeback and wanted to be in person they're all the old guard. There's no new person that was there for like, oh, I'm excited about, like the only time that I saw a little bit of younger audiences was like when there was a party and they were like partying and just like they cared about the party, even if it was 118 degrees outside and we were outdoors for the closing party.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. And it's so funny to just look at it from that point of view, because I feel like you said, like we forget how not all in-person events were fantastic. Not all experiences were great. And we want to go back to that, like it's some sort of a heaven, where the reality is that we do need to learn from what we've gone through and just apply the good things and then change. Like this whole thing is a game changer. And if we don't, like in our 30s and our 40s, this generation, the upcoming generation will, and we're going to be feeling like left behind.
Totally. What I can tell you, like going back to your question, looking at 21, 22 and what's ahead, I got it right. I mean, honestly, like on this one, I got it right. I failed in many, many things. Looking at the future, I got it completely wrong, a lot of stuff. But on this one, I got it right. I stressed event planners for years to get knowledgeable about technology, becoming technology savvy, understanding the role of technology in events. But there's always been a disconnect with the audience. It's counterintuitive. Like you don't choose to be an event planner because you love technology, right? Yeah. It's like completely opposite to what. But like this denial of technology that a lot of people enforce, this is why they're out of business right now, right? A lot of, unfortunately, that's the truth of it, right? Because all of those that embrace technology in the past, they may have been laid off anyway, but they found a job like overnight because they had a lot of skills in that time frame.
Or even the desire and open-mindedness to just try it. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah. Let's not go back to the thinking that since in-person events are going to come back, now I'm going to embrace in-person and I can forget about tech, because it's not like that. Like tech is going to be stronger, even stronger. For me personally, like what paid off for me over the past year and a half was my knowledge of tech. It wasn't my knowledge of events. And I would see that growing even more going forward. It's not going to go back. So like, don't expect virtual events to go back. Don't expect the use of technology in events to go back, because that's not going to happen. It's going to go more.
100%. Now, because, like you said, you have been at the forefront of event technology for as long as we can remember. And with that thought in mind,
now you make me feel old again. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, because I'm right there with you. For as long as we can remember. Well, let's say in the last 10 years.
All right.
Although, if you want to put on a resume, then you can take it as long back as you like to.
For a while.
For a while. What I'm trying to get to is the excitement in the experience event design space right now is simply this amount of massive new technologies that have been evolving and the data that came with that, but also there's a unique set of challenges that we have encountered. And in order to create an attendee journey in this digital space that is enriched and is helpful and is not just using new tech for the sake of using new tech, how can we then use the tools that we have at hand? How can we best use the tools that we have at hand to better design memorable event experiences and moving forward into 2022?
That's a great question. I think we need to come clean on data and how amazing data is, but what's the reality of it? Like, the reality of it is that probably for the past 15 years, I've seen one or two event planners using data, like the way event technology companies are advocating it, and like they want planners to use it. I've almost never seen a planner use it strategically to make decisions about what's coming next. Obviously, more people realize the importance of that for the business model of virtual events, which is one based on that type of data interaction, is because it becomes more part of the online marketing realm where you can sell analytics, you can sell performance, you can sell exposure, whatever it is. Like, there's hard data to back that up. But like, the only way I see data becoming integral part of how we make decisions when it gets to in-person, virtual, hybrid events is going to be if there's people within the team dedicated to make sense of this data that comes in and create business decisions out of it. We've tried everything. We've tried simple dashboards. We've tried complex dashboards. But if we expect the event planner to go in there, make sense of it, and like create a strategy based on that, it's just not going to happen. Because like, the reality of it is that even in like complex e-commerce teams that I've been part of, there's an analytics person that takes the data and makes sense of it for the business. Like, you can't expect the head of marketing to go in the data on a daily basis and make sense out of it.
Yeah.
So maybe some people are more like that, and you will find those occasional, but like, as a business process, like, we need a person in charge of the data, make sense out of it, and make strategic decisions or recommendations based on that. Absolutely. That's the only way that data is going to become functional to event planning. I don't see any other way that the user is going to do that.
Yeah, and I've seen situations in which an event planner would actually take just a portion of the data to reflect their decision that they've already made. Basically use the data for their advantage, but ignore everything else. Like, just take a simple example is like, well, we only had so many people, so many viewers during the live event, but then they forget and they ignore all the users that maybe joined the event post live, right? Like, how about all those users that actually engage with your content post event? Are we forgetting about them? Like, does that not matter? Like, isn't that part of the general, overall number? So you could take, data, just portions of it also to whatever fulfill your goals, but that's not necessarily going to be in your best interest because it is a whole umbrella. It's everything that you have to take in consideration. It's like you said, it will take someone that's their job to look into it and create the trends and create the graphs that will dictate, okay, this is what makes sense because this is what we know based on hard numbers, right?
Agreed.
Now, as a Swapcard insider, I cannot not ask you, what are some of the upcoming and exciting, technology applications that we should know about in regards to extended reality stages, the data that we just talked about, the analytics, the AI matching? Are the machines planning to take over soon?
So obviously, we're big believers in artificial intelligence. Before the virtual revolution, we started as a mobile app for events to connect people better through means of AI. So that's our sweet spot. That's what we like to do. And we work specifically with very large events, right? So we work with all the events for Informa, all the events for IBM, events like South by Southwest, hundreds of thousands of attendees. So one of the issues that you have as soon as you join, whether it's virtual or in person, you have the same problem. Who am I going to meet? What sessions should I attend? There's too much information going on. I'm overwhelmed, right? So smart platforms like Swapcards, or, there's a lot of them out there. I'm not just going to say that we're the only ones doing it, help you to get context on where to go, who to meet, what sessions to attend. And the great thing about Swapcard specifically is that it learns about the user over time, so that if you attend multiple events on Swapcard, it keeps learning, right? So the next time, based on the connections that you made, is going to recommend new people to meet, or new sessions to attend, or new products to discover, exhibitors to talk to. So that context element is so important right now, because as soon as we join these virtual events or in-person events, we're lost in senior information. So you want the platform to actually help you make those decisions based on factual data, not on just basic tagging, right? So that's also important, because a lot of people say they have AI, but then again, it's like 3 tags that you put in it and they try to match it.
And it reflects on the audience, and it puts the weight on the audience, on whoever is joining, to actually make sure that they tag themselves correctly.
Yeah. I mean, we're in 2021, we can do better than that.
Yeah.
So there's a wealth of information available. So it's important to use that information wisely within the rules and the privacy law and all of that. But at the same time, it's important to make use of that information to optimize the experience for everybody, because at the end of the day, if someone attends an event and say, oh, it was just a waste of time, it is a waste of time. So you want the platform to perform a service. And what service the platform performs on the back end is really that artificial intelligence powered sort of type of experience that multiplies exponentially if we talk community, which is the other aspect we're working on extremely hard right now to ship all the features that we've announced at previous events, and that we will announce on our event on July 7th. We're doing another big Evolve event with Ariana Huffington as a keynote. We have updates from our team showcasing what's coming next. So everybody welcome to join, by the way. But what I'm saying is, during that, we'll discover more applications of the community part and what it means really to be part of the community, and this constant learning and this context that grows over time. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you join an event. You have to connect to new people again. You have to find the same people once more. But all that information is now part of the community. The relationships out there, your history in terms of connection and messages is there, regardless of the event you attend. So on a bigger layer that acts more like LinkedIn, right? Where the context is there, and then you can go to a group, move from one group to another, from one event to another, but in a more contextualized way, where the platform is already there to provide all that context that you need to make the most out of your time, because that's the problem. We don't have any time to waste.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this context, then, I guess one question that keeps in mind is, what's the difference between, or I guess some of the best tips on keeping people on the platform versus connecting with people off the platform? Is this where the community aspect comes in mind?
Yeah, I believe that's what it is, because sometimes, as I will be able to attend an event in Vegas, sometimes some members of the same community, they will meet for Confex in London, right? So how do you pull it together? That's the question. How do you make both parties not feel disjoint? If you take this for associations, it's especially relevant, but also for large trade shows that may be itinerant and be on the road and be roadshow formats. How do you pull it all together? How do you connect all these audiences and make them be on the same platform and feel the same part of the same experience? It's not necessarily to make them attend that event virtually, right? But it's maybe part of seeing a single stream with the updates from people attending that in-person events, talking great about a speaker or a session, and actually being able to go on that platform and check out that session because you're interested in and you're part of that community. So all of a sudden, you don't need to feel like kind of a second level type of attendee, but if you have the option to access what they're accessing, you have it.
Absolutely. Now, you've probably, like you said, you experienced quite a number of virtual events in the last 16 months or whatever, how long it's been by now. If I were to ask you, what were your top 3, from maybe small to large, would you have an answer? Does anything come to mind?
So believe it or not, I haven't attended a bunch of virtual events. Actually, I've done a lot of events. On the other hand, I've planned a lot of events, but I haven't attended many. So I'm not probably the best one to say this, but obviously I've seen some that I've run on Swapcard. I've been able to see some of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been blown away by South by Southwest.
Which I'm not even
Incredible.
going to ask the budget that goes into that.
Don't.
Okay, maybe I should. Just to give people a perspective of what we're talking about, because a lot of people that really don't gauge how much actually costs to put on a truthful virtual experience.
Let's go. They didn't go with the premium plan. They went a little bit behind that, so beyond that. So no, it's obviously like a huge event, thousands and thousands of people. So the level of production of that feels like it reminds us of a TV show. Whenever you have that TV show feeling, I feel events are doing a great job in that sense. Then there's been events that have been able to connect people better on the round tables and, in huddles. One of the first people that did it, not necessarily the best implementation, but one of that, the first that actually split thousands of people in breakout rooms was Tony Robbins with his UPW, and like driving thousands of people constantly between the main session and the breakouts and back. So I've seen that, and it's obviously requires a humongous monumental
I've also seen
to-
the back behind the stage production setup for that as well.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And so that those two elements, to me, it's like either high-end TV style type of production or very attendee driven, like group driven type of implementation. Those are the things that I like the most. And whenever I've seen applications of that, I've been very, very much a fan of it.
So is there any hope for an event with a smaller budget to create anything of that scale in that case?
Yeah, I think there still is, absolutely. Why not? It's like, this is the opportunity to do it, right? Virtual is the opportunity to do it. You're not going to be able to do it in person, maybe, because the costs are way higher when you consider all the venue and the travel and the F&B and all of that. You're slashing all of that.
Yeah.
So really have the opportunity to be innovative. And I feel that a lot of event brands kind of rise up during the pandemic as a result of the leveling that the virtual tool made, right? So you didn't need this crazy budget. Like the spend, usually it's like for the infrastructure. The spend is usually for like how many people you need to work on it, or like how many people attend the event, right? So if you have like hundreds of thousands of people attending, obviously it's going to be a much more complex. But can you innovate and scale with virtual? This is probably the best opportunity you have to do so. Like with in-person events, I don't think you have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, Julius, this was a fantastic discussion, such a good conversation. I'm so happy that we got to do this. Now, one last question for you. What does Julius do to relax and keep his mind sharp and mental capacity, in the right healthy space, besides being a Peloton addict and blasting his neighbors with his karaoke tunes?
Spoiler. Yeah, no, I need a holiday like a lot of us. So hopefully we'll get it soon to disconnect 100%, because one of the issues with tech is that you're always on, like no matter what. But disconnecting, I'm looking forward to that whenever it's going to be, to completely disconnect. But, working out, Peloton, big Peloton fan, has like a lot of learnings for I always see like what's the take for planners in everything that I do, almost like work on that mentality. So Peloton is a great example of like how the virtual community comes together. And funny fact, I've been able to go back to the gym here in Vegas since like 2 months now. I still keep my Peloton membership. It's a completely different experience that I don't get in the gym, even if I attend classes in the gym and the like. So that tells you a lot. But like between the gym and the Peloton, that's where I sort of let go physically, because, sitting the whole day in front of a computer is just like so miserable.
Absolutely. And then from time to time, you just burst into a karaoke song.
Yeah, man, I do love my karaoke with friends and family. I'm actually pretty good at it.
Oh my gosh.
Italian songs.
I should have had some Italian songs queued up for you.
That becomes a paid engagement, Anca. You know what I mean? Like I would have to charge a big fee for that.
I guess I totally understand. I gotta tell you though, like growing up, I had those cassettes, because we grew up on cassettes. But
vintage.
Right, totally vintage. And I had about 10, because I couldn't afford more, but all 10 were like those top Italian singers. And man, I love listening to those cassettes.
Romina, Toto Cutugno.
Absolutely.
Eros,
Toto Cutugno. Oh, my heart. You just broke my heart.
Of course. I know the levers that activate Eastern Europe immediately.
See, 100%. I am so missing those cassettes, and I'm like trying to have my family look into the attic, like find them. I'll figure out a way to play them. I just need them back.
Drupi. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Julius, for this time. Where can people engage with you that you prefer to be on mostly these days?
At @2Julius, TOJULIUS. So @2Julius everywhere, like LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. So you'll find me there, Facebook, whatever.
I'm pretty sure they don't have to Google far.
No.
Thank you so much for this time.
Thanks
it's been
me.
an amazing conversation. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you as well. And please do come up with some event trends for 2022. I am looking forward to those newsletters and whatever comes out of your fingerprints, I'm all over it. So appreciate you.
Let's make it happen. Thank you, Anca, and congrats. This is an amazing show.
Thank you so much. Okay, friends, this is it for today's episode. Wasn't this such an amazing episode? It was such a pleasure talking to Julius. I just appreciate him so much and everything that he's contributed this far to the event industry. And I know he's nowhere being done with that. Thank you so much to all of you listening here in US as well as around the world. Wherever you're tuning in from, please do subscribe on your favorite listening platform and leave a 5-star review to make this podcast visible to more event professionals just like yourself. I welcome your feedback. Keep that coming either on Instagram on our brand new account, Events Demystified Podcast, which you are invited to follow, like, join, whatever you feel like doing, or just DM on Instagram with your ideas and suggestions for topics of discussion and future guests, or via email at podcast@3funevents.com. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time.